Hello, it's your friendly neighborhood Brazilian, Fernanda. I just wanted to give a quick update on the release schedule for the podcast. Previously, Nina and I were releasing an episode every week, but girl, that was a lot of work. So we decided to switch it up to releasing one episode every 2 weeks so it's a little easier on us. This week we have a very exciting guest, Sonia Michaels, who is a senior lecturer at DigiPen Institute of Technology. She gave us a lot of really great information about interviews and resumes. And Nina and I have been in the industry for a little while, but we learned a lot from Sonia, and we hope that you're gonna listen to the whole thing and learn as much as we did, if not more. Enjoy! Recording in progress.
Never heard this before.
Yeah, me neither. But okay, my name is Fernanda. I am a technical artist, and I'm here with my lovely co-host.
And my name is Nina. I'm also a technical artist. Today we have a guest.
We do. We have our lovely guest, Sonia Michaels. She is a senior lecturer at DigiPen, which is where Nina and I graduated from. And she's here to talk about resumes and interviews, which I think is an incredibly important topic that not a lot of people get to know about until they actually need it. So Sonia, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much.
So I wanted to get started with something that might seem a little bit silly.
Do we want to ask a little bit about her background and give her a chance to introduce herself? No?
Fine.
That must sound like might be a better idea. No shit, Fernanda.
Oh my goodness. Now I feel the pressure. Okay, so I am, as you said, on the faculty at DigiPen Institute of Technology, and I've been there for 12 years, and I've been teaching for 30 years, so it's been a very long time. And one of the things that I do at DigiPen, I teach a mix of English classes and communication classes. And so for the communication classes that I do, we talk a lot about how to get a job, how to keep a job, resumes, cover letters, interview skills, all of the things that you need to know to basically graduate from college, get out there, be an adult in the world, and have an amazing career. So that's what I focus on.
Yes, I do remember you telling me about your communication class, and I think I told you, but I regret to this day that I never took it because it sounds like it was the kind of information that a lot of people in my cohort needed.
Well, I hope so.
Useful.
That's what people tell me, and it took me a few years to be able to offer the class. And now that I can, I think it is helpful to a lot of people because like getting out there and finishing college is a lot. It's a lot of stress, and so I try to make that path a little smoother for people.
Yeah, Nina, did you know that we have like a class that's focused on like resumes?
No idea.
Preparing?
I only know there's a portfolio class, but never heard of your class before, Sonia.
Yeah, well, there you go.
Yeah.
I've been teaching it for something like 7 or 8 years now, I think.
Oh,
and
wow.
The portfolio class, I also work closely with the professor who teaches that because we want to make sure that we are giving like unified advice to people so that it's not like 5 people telling you different things.
Did we get advice on our resumes in our portfolio class? Because I don't exactly remember that.
We had to submit it, and he gave some like written critique back to us for that class.
Yeah, I do remember seeing the resumes that came out of that class, and I do have some opinions about it, but I want to talk about that later.
Okay.
But like, okay, so like on a very basic level, people, like, what is a resume and why should we have one?
Okay, your resume is the first impression that you give to people who might be thinking about employing you. And so it's important in that sense. And what I always tell people is that once you've had your first like couple of jobs in the industry, it actually becomes less important because that's when you know people and when you will get jobs because, somebody recommended you for it. So you'll still need a resume, but it is not necessarily going to have to be as beautiful and impressive as your sort of first resume launching your career, because that is your one opportunity to get people to go, ooh, we want to interview this person.
Yeah, my first resume was like this really beautiful Photoshop template full of things, and now it's just like a text document. And it worked for me.
And you get jobs, exactly, because people know who you are and what you can do.
Heard a myth. Like, is it true that only resume is the important part, but the cover letter is not that important and people don't tend to read it? Is that true?
I think it depends on the company. Most recently, I've seen a couple of studios saying on their ads, like something like, don't send us a cover letter, we won't read it. But which I think is great actually, because what it means is that it's not just the people who are good at spinning themselves. Anyone with a good resume can get a chance that way. And, some people just aren't good at writing those kinds of letters, but maybe they still deserve the chance. But
Sure.
in general, I think if they ask for a cover letter, it is important because it helps. Like I always tell people, your cover letter is like your highlights reel, right? This is where you pull out those 3 or 4 things that you really, really want them to focus on. That, there's a pile of stuff on your resume and then there are fewer things in your cover letter, but that's your chance to say, hey, look what I did. Look at these 3 projects. These are really cool.
I see.
Yeah, I never enjoyed writing cover letters because I always felt like I was lying. Like, oh, I am in love with your studio and I've been wanting to work there since I was like 12 years old. And I'm like, that's totally not true, but I'm desperate for this job.
Yeah, and there are ways around that. And I do talk to people about being able to be authentic, even if you're not really familiar with the company. Like find something in their job posting that is cool. Find out what they seem to prioritize. Go and look at their mission statement and look at their website and see what's cool. And then even if you've never, played played their games or whatever, you can still say, okay, I love the way that your teams are all seated around this big central core so that everyone can talk to each other. You can still find something cool to say to show how you'll fit.
So what do you think? Because I was talking about my beautiful Photoshop layout that I had at first, what do you think makes a resume stand out in a good way and in a bad way?
Okay, well, in a good way, it's just got to be really readable. Like, I know so many people who try to cram everything they've ever done onto one piece of paper, and it's like in an 8-point font, and it's all cluttered and whatever. And that's not going to help. It has to be readable, and you have to be selective about what you put on there. And there are a couple of things that people do that absolutely drive me crazy because they are counterproductive. They actually don't work. And because game developers, especially designers, do this thing where to show their level of experience with something, they put like little bars or life bars or hearts or something, which one, it's cluttery and gets kind of ugly. But 2, like if you're a student just graduating, you can't give yourself like 5 diamonds in anything. So you're going to give yourself like 3 in everything, and then you're going to look kind of mediocre, right?
Yeah.
And so it really doesn't work. The other thing I have to tell you is that artists always put the logos for the programs they know how to use. So like the Maya, ZBrush, all of that stuff. The problem is when they don't also put the word for it, because a lot of recruiters, especially if they're like new to recruiting, new to games, they won't recognize those logos, but also machines won't be able to read them. And so if this is going to go through a machine reader before a human sees it, you're kind of, it's problematic. You will just never get a human looking at your resume. So have the logos if you want to, make them small, make them nice and like unobtrusive instead of like the one thing that everyone will instantly look at because it's like the one colorful thing on your resume, but have the word as well.
See, so they do use some program to parse through the resumes to look for keywords, right?
Yeah, a lot of companies do now, and that's like the first thing before any people ever look at it. It just goes through, they look for the keywords. If they're not there, you get thrown out.
I had someone tell me once, like, oh, you should like get the keywords in the job description and put them in your resume, but like make them white so it doesn't show up, so that it's gonna like get scanned or something.
It's kind of tricky, and I think that recruiters are onto this now. Like I talked to some HR people who are like, yeah, we know people do that. I mean, why not just use the keywords while describing your skills and your experiences? Like say I created this many assets using this piece of software, and so on. There's no reason to hide them in like white text if you can just use them.
Yeah, I would just be like substance painter, like everything on my resume. Do you think okay, so here's one thing that I used to see, or I saw like at some point, like a resume that was like 5 pages long and it looked like a Cheesecake Factory menu. That's a no-no, right? Like what happens when you have too much experience? You just try to be as selective as possible?
You are selective and you make sure that there's a link to your portfolio or your website really prominently so that it's like this is selected stuff on the resume, and then click through if you want to look at all of the things. Also, because remember that sometimes people will be reading 200, 300 of these in one day. They will not read your 5-page resume. And the last thing you want to do is irritate the person that you want to give you a job.
Yeah.
You get 1 page. You might get 2 pages one day when you have a whole ton of experience, or if you had like a whole separate career before you went into games, you get 1 page.
Yeah, I heard similar advice about that as well, that like we get 1 page until like we become maybe like at least mid-level, senior level, that we get multiple pages.
Yeah. You get a few pages when you've got like all that experience and all those awards, and you have to have a whole section for your awards. Yeah, then you get a 2-pager.
Well, here's the other side of the spectrum. What if you're a student and you don't have enough to put on your resume? Are there like some ways around it?
Oh yeah, and especially because not all colleges have the same project-based curriculum, and so one of the things that employers want to see is they want to know that the people they're hiring understand the full cycle of development. And so if you go to a school like DigiPen, you've done so many projects that they know that you understand what the cycle looks like, and you know the vocabulary, and they can basically drop you into the position and you'll be okay. You'll have a little bit of a learning curve, but you'll be okay. Some schools, you don't even get to touch a game project until like your senior year capstone project. And so that is harder. And so for students in that position, I always say, if you've worked on little solo things, or if you've done game jams, if you've done game jams, art jams, anything like that, that can go on your resume, because again, what it's showing is that you understand the process from beginning to end.
Game jams, such an important thing. I've never done a game jam. I should probably do one at some point. But fortunately, I went to DigiPen and I had a bunch of game projects to put on my resume. So that was a really good thing.
I feel like DigiPen courses are structured that way so that like we can stand out when people look at our resumes. And I kind of feel that way.
It's true. And it does make a big difference, because I talk to a lot of students at other colleges as well. And I always find that the students at DigiPen do have all of that project experience. Even if they've had 1 or 2 teams that kind of fell apart, they've still got more stuff to put on there.
Real life teams also fall apart. So that's a nice experience that helps.
Yep. Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so what are the main portions of a resume?
Oh, goodness. Well, you got to have, of course, your beautiful header space, which will have your name bigger than everything else, and your title, which, of course, will change depending on the position you're applying for. And so we don't use objective lines anymore. Those are kind of a waste of space, because your objective is to get the job that you're applying for. And so instead of the objective line, you have your name, and then you have your title, technical artist or 3D character artist, or whatever it is that the job is, and then your contact information. So email, a phone number, even though I know everyone hates phone calls these days, you still have to have a phone number on there, your portfolio or your art station or whatever it is, but please not your street address, not your mailing address, because the world is a scary place.
Yeah, I guess back in the day, if they were supposed to mail something to you, but not anymore.
No, it's not really safe to do that.
Yeah, I've also seen, one time I offered resume reviews on my Twitter, and this person from like, I think Taiwan, like a forensic scientist, sent me the resume for review, and she had like her photo, her address, and I was like, I don't know what to tell you, because I feel like culturally, like this information varies a lot from region to region.
Yeah, it is a cultural thing, and sometimes they'll make you have your birth date, your marital status, a photograph, all things that would be illegal in the United States to even ask you about, and you have to put it on there. So even that first section of your resume can be like a landmine, right? And then of course you've got to have your project experience if you're a student, your work experience, your education, and your skills. So your skills meaning the things that you know how to do and the tools that you also know how to use. So it's like the software is one thing, but then there's your foundational art skills, whether it's figure drawing or sculpture or anything like that. And so your skills will have to be divided very clearly so that people know what they're looking at.
Do people like the separation of soft skills and hard skills? Or is that like kind of outdated?
Well, the thing that I have the problem with is that most of the time, what people call soft skills, they do so in a kind of a negative sense. And they put stuff
Oh.
on there that they consider like filler, like things like,
Leadership.
exactly, communication skills and leadership and whatever. And those are really important. They're not like soft and squishy things. They're really important. But I still don't think you need to necessarily have them on there unless it's for a position that really requires that. Like for a producer, you have to have all kinds of stuff on there about your communication and your organizational skills and so on. For other jobs, that may be less important. And so I prefer to divide it like you see programmers divided theirs into like languages and APIs and stuff like that. You see artists dividing into the sort of foundational skills and the software skills. Designers, it'll be stuff like rapid prototyping and whatever. So it's different for every discipline, really.
Oh, let me check my resume real quick because I think I had like, time management. I hope I took that out. But well, I do know that I ran into this issue where I know programming languages and I also know languages, and I wanted to separate them, but I didn't want to say languages and then afterwards languages, meaning
right.
Portuguese and English.
Right. So you could put something like programming languages and then languages or whatever.
Yeah.
There are ways around it, definitely.
I actually had similar issues. So like I just put, as Sonia said, at the top I just have languages, Thai, English, Japanese, and then at the top it's just programming languages.
Yeah, that works.
Yeah.
Basically, you just want to make it easy to read. That is like the one thing. You just want the recruiter or the hiring manager to look at it and go, okay, I know exactly what I'm looking at. That's it.
What about education?
For education, a couple of things. One is that if you are, if you're finishing a degree, you don't have to put the year you started. You just have to put the year that you finished, because it's not really important when you started as long as you finished. And so I know a lot of students get upset because they're like, I took 5 or 6 years instead of 4 years. Nobody cares. Just put the date, graduation, spring 2021, whatever it is. And that will be absolutely fine. And never put high school on there, because high school tells everyone exactly how old you are. And you don't, and you don't want that, especially if you're my age, but you don't want that anyway.
What if you didn't finish a degree?
If you didn't finish the degree, then I would put the dates, from and to dates, and then something like, I usually suggest people put something like, coursework toward the Bachelor of Arts in Game Design, or something like that. So it's clear you're not trying to fool anyone, but it's not like graduated April, whatever.
I remember my parents telling me, yeah, you should put you remember that volunteer project you did when you were 12? And I'm like, that doesn't seem correct.
Yeah, don't go back that far. You don't have to go back that far. And there are also some ways to make your resume look less like studenty. So instead of putting that this was your junior project or spring semester, you just put the dates. You put, September, 2019 to August, 2020 or whatever, instead of fall semester, spring semester. And then it makes it look less like a student resume and more like a young professional resume.
So you did mention about like tailoring the resume according to different position that we're applying for. But what if you're applying for multiple positions? Which one would you choose to put on your website?
On your website, you will have something that works as kind of an all-purpose resume. I do know people who go as far as having websites that, like, what they put on a resume for one company will take people to a different version of their website, but that is complicated and that's a lot of work. So I would say, as long as you have a general purpose resume, so you might not get as much, you might not say like junior 2D character artist or something. It might just be character artist, and then a selection of your projects and so on. And then elsewhere on your portfolio site, you'll have all the other stuff. So it won't be the only thing that people ever see.
Speaking a little bit about work experience, I don't know if we should go too much into detail on how to write bullet points, because that's like a whole other monster to tackle, right?
It is, but it's also pretty simple. It's like basically what you did, what you used to do it, and what you achieved, and like also how many of it you did. So, created this many things using this, and then the result was that it made it easier for the programmers to integrate the art assets into the whatever. So each bullet should tell a story like that.
What if someone has an employment gap and they don't really know what to do?
It depends why. And also because like there are some things that are, of course, illegal to ask you about, but in at least in the United States. But like they can't ask, well, are you married or anything like that. And so there are some questions that they can't ask. Oh, that 3-year gap, was that like you had a baby or something? Totally illegal to ask you about that. But I would say just be prepared to address any major gaps. And sometimes the gaps are moved from one country to another and had to take some time to settle in, whatever. I think that one of the things about this past year is that there will be a lot of gaps on a lot of people's resumes.
Yeah.
And companies are going to have to be reasonable about that, because they don't know if somebody in the family got very sick or passed away. They don't know if somebody couldn't finish their last semester of school because they lost their job, and so I think that any decent company will be decent about that stuff. I'd say if there is a large gap of more than 9 months or something, then it's something, have a story ready to tell about it. Whatever it was that happened, maybe it was caring for a family member, maybe it was a relocation thing. Either way, just be prepared to talk about it so they don't think you were in jail or something.
So just in case, what if that asking for a friend, what if that was the case? How do you think we should address it in the interview?
Well, I think that anyone who hires you is eventually going to do a background check on you. And so they will find out whatever you've got going on. And so I always think that it's best for you to control the story instead of waiting until they find something out and go, oh no, wait a second, we didn't know this. You say, okay, while you're looking into my background, there are some things I think you should know. Here's what happened. Here's how I got through to the other side of this. Here's what I learned, and so you make everything into a growth story, a growth and sort of redemption story.
How often should a person update their resume? I usually try to do it once every 2 months, but I guess it depends on are there any changes in your life?
Exactly. Whenever something changes, in large part because if something happens, if you lose your job, if the studio closes, if you get laid off, something like that, usually what happens is that there's this big first wave of sympathy, right? Somebody says, oh no, Telltale just shut down. And then within half an hour, Twitter's all like, we're hiring Telltale people and so on. So it helps if your resume is half an hour and it's ready to go. If you have to start over, you're going to miss that whole wave of we want to help you. And so I'd say, yeah, every couple of months or every time you get a big promotion, you get a title change, something happens, you ship something, do the updates. You don't have to make it all pretty because you can do that quickly, but make sure you have a document in which all that stuff is ready to go, ready to just stick in there.
Yeah. The reason I like having my resume on Google Docs is just that it's so easy to edit and it updates in all of your devices. So it's ready to go.
It really is. And it makes it easy to also have a master document that might be 4 pages long and to just pick and choose the bits you need for any one job you want to apply for.
Smart. I might try that too. Google Docs.
That's what I do for cover letters too. All these little paragraphs about the time you used this and the time you did that, so that you can just put it together easily.
Yeah, I used the Google Docs a lot for my cover letters in college. I just had a master template, and every time I had to apply to something, it would duplicate it, change a few things, duplicate it again.
As long as you change the things, because I've known people who sent a cover letter that literally said insert company name here. I have always wanted to work at insert company name here. Oh no.
Let's see, what else do we have? Do you have anything else for resumes, Nina? Because I feel like we went over a lot of stuff.
Not really. Aside from, do we have time for an example resume critique?
It's up to you, and I can always do those after as well. Absolutely. if you don't want to,
I'm actually nervous to show mine, so maybe later.
Yeah, that's fine. You can send it to me anytime. And you've helped out a bunch of my students. I know that because I see your name pop up on informational interviews. So
Oh,
so happy to
yeah.
help out. Yeah.
Oh, right. Nina does a lot of that stuff.
Yeah,
How do
a
I
couple
sign up for
people.
that?
You just did. You just signed up for it. So when I
Oh,
need a
cool.
technical when I need a technical artist, I'll be like, knock, knock, are you there? Because sometimes, especially now with everything being shut down, it's harder for students to meet people to talk to. And so I'm always trying to make connections for them.
Oh yeah, I like to do mentorships. I actually just finished a mentorship like 2 days ago. So if anybody like needs a tech art mentor, I'd be more than happy to help, even though I'm still a little baby tech artist myself.
Hey, anything helps. Be careful what you ask for because I will send people to you.
Send them to me. I love helping.
Excellent.
We kind of talked a little bit about it in the beginning. What are some of the common mistakes you see students making in their resumes? I know that we talked about the health bars.
Oh, yes, the health bars.
But I do remember, I think for the BFA program specifically, people made their resumes like so glittery and like so colorful that they all stood out. But
Yeah.
because they all stood out, none of them stood out. Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
Absolutely. And I think it's like there is this temptation to like put all of your good stuff on there, but don't do that because then, as you say, it'll just be overwhelming and nothing will stand out. So if people want to put a piece of their work on there, I think that's wonderful, but I like make it one little character up in the corner or one piece of environment, work across the bottom or something. Don't overwhelm the reader because they might be reading this on an iPad on a bus or, like not everyone is going to be seeing it under perfect conditions. So make it beautiful, but make it really, really readable. And I think the other thing that I notice is that, especially for artists, this is where I always have to do like group therapy for my BFAs, is that artists have a really hard time saying good things about themselves and saying what
Yeah.
they, and I'm always saying more. I want to know what you contributed to this project. And they say, well, and I'm like, no, not we. What did you do? What did you create? How did you fit in? How do you work with people? And it's really harder for artists for some reason. And a lot of BFAs have told me they think that's because it's not like measurable in the same way. Like if you're a programmer, your code compiles or it doesn't, right? But if you're an artist, it's so hard to say, well, this is really good. I'm really proud of this because you're always being critiqued into the ground, right? And so I think being able to speak about yourself honestly and with confidence is really, really important. And students often feel like they have to downplay and, oh, it wasn't much. It wasn't a big deal. It was only this little solo thing. No, be proud of what you've done. This is so important.
Yeah. Also kind of a funny story, but back in the day when I had my business cards and I was changing them with other BFAs, one person gave me a business card that was like shaped in like a really weird way, and it stood out in the sense that it was very inconvenient to keep in my wallet. So
Yep.
like, I guess don't do it.
Yeah, there's all kinds of interesting, weird business cards, but like those little ones that are shaped like luggage tags, every year after GDC, like I find them in the lining of my suitcase when I'm getting ready for the next GDC. So that didn't work out so great. So yeah, keep it simple. Make sure somebody can write on it so they can take notes about you, basic.
Yeah. A gift from Zoom. Running out of time. We've removed the 40-minute time limit on your group. Thanks, I guess.
Okay then.
Okay. Okay. Interviews. Interviews are hard, you guys. Well, they're not as hard for me for some reason. But I heard that people think that interviews are very hard. Do we want to talk about it? Nina, do you want to talk about it?
Yeah, I
like
mean, I still get nervous when I get online interviews. So
interviews are scary. They really are. Even if you're extroverted, they can be really scary because of that whole thing of being judged, right? Like this is your chance. This is your shot to convince these people. And that's so much pressure. It's so much pressure that even the smartest people will sometimes shut down under that pressure.
I feel like we're at a very interesting time to talk about interviews because of the pandemic. So my interview at EA was, I've never met any of my coworkers in person, by the way. I had my interview in Redmond through Zoom, and then I came to California and it's still talking to them through Zoom. So should we even talk about in-person interviews? I feel like, who knows if we're going to have one of those?
They're coming back. But one of the things that I've been thinking and wondering is that it used to be that if you were going to do like a big interview loop, say you're in Redmond and they're interviewing you in California, they book you a plane ticket and fly you down there. And, then you'd spend all day going from room to room being interviewed by 6 different people. I'm wondering if that's even going to happen again so much, because now there's all this, hey, let's just book 6 Zoom sessions back to back and see how it goes. And I don't think we know yet what things are going to look like.
That's what happened to me.
Yeah.
It was exhausting.
They're really exhausting, and pressure. And then there's like, you have to go out to lunch and behave properly during lunch and all of this stuff when you're so tired. Yeah, so I think a lot of it'll be online.
Yeah, like Nina, did you say that you had like the Zoom meetings back?
Yeah, sorry. I mean, I had all my interviews through Zoom, and it was like, kind of like that 7 meetings. Well, talk with 7 people.
Yeah, it's a lot of time to just be on a screen, in a close-up shot. It's an awful lot of time.
Yeah, I don't know if it was worse or better, because I understand that the in-person element, like we missed that. But when I had my interview, I had like multiple monitors with all my notes. I had like my textbooks, like everything was ready to go.
That's the good part. You can have all your notes, you can have your resume, you can have the letter you sent so that you know what you said. And that does make it a lot easier, I think. But then, of course, you have to make decisions about what are people going to look at? Is it going to be a background? Is it going to be a blurred background? Is it going to be a cat tree like it is for me? And, I would change this. If this was a job interview, I would change the background. And these are decisions that people didn't have to make a year ago.
Yeah. Phone interviews. I feel like every time I had a phone interview, it wasn't really an interview. It was more like a chit chat, like screening. Do people actually have experiences where they're talking to like the manager and they're asking about your experience in your resume? Because I never had that happen to me.
Yep, they do. Again, I think that things have changed a lot. And these days a phone interview is usually just that initial screening. Like, is this the same person who submitted the resume? Is there anything really weird that we need to know before we go into the full interview? But they're usually only about half an hour. And like you said, a little bit of chit chat and so on. And then they'll get the idea of whether they want to do the full loop with you or not.
Yeah, my phone interview that I had for one of my jobs, it was like, well, the recruiter told me, yeah, you should like memorize the mission statement and all these things. And then like when I actually had the phone screening, it was like a 2-minute conversation. And then I asked him, hey, like, it was kind of weird. It was only 2 minutes. And then the guy told me, yeah, we just wanted to make sure you were not an asshole. I was like, okay.
Exactly. And that is what most people need to know before they hire you. Honestly, that is the big, the big thing, because as I'm always telling students, and I ask this question to every developer I meet, everything. I drive people crazy. I ask this question. I say, okay, you can hire 2 people. One of them is amazingly talented, polished, incredible at what they do, but they're kind of an asshole. The other one has like a ton of potential. They need a little bit of polishing up, a little bit of training, but they're really awesome human being. Which one do you hire? Nobody ever hires the asshole because they're like, I can train somebody. I can't train somebody out of being an asshole.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I hear lots of stories like that of people who are crazy talented. And then, I mean, honestly, all the people that I knew at DigiPen who were like really talented, but like either like isolated themselves during college or like were just kind of asshole-ish. I never heard from them again. Like I don't see them in the industry ever.
No. And people forget how small the industry is and how much people talk to each other. And I tell everyone, one of these days somebody's gonna like come over to you or start a call with you and say, hey, this person just applied for a job, somebody and then you have the power. Like, you can either say wonderful things about them, or you can say, yes, I know that person, I have no comment, which is all you need to say ever, right? And so that's why don't be an asshole is the first rule of getting a career in games.
Illegal to like speak negatively if you get called as a reference?
If you get called as a professional reference, there are certain things that you have to be careful about. But if this is just as simple as somebody wandering by your desk and going, hey, didn't you go to school with this person? the same, it's not like it's a professional official reference you're giving. And the industry tends to work on that sort of networking, network of connections.
Yeah. Wait, what if my absolute professional opinion is that this person is an asshole? Will I get arrested for it? I don't get it. Like...
No, and that's the thing that's why you're if you could possibly find yourself in some trouble if you ever said, oh, this person, let me tell you about all these things that they did, and let me tell you about this. You're not going to do that. All you have to say is, yeah, I know that person, and your silence will say the rest.
Really?
Wow.
Oh my gosh!
Because if you have good things to say about someone, you are always going to say the good things about them. If you have bad things, you can either say bad things or you can say nothing, and it'll pretty much have the same effect, right? So
I mean, what's the point of asking for a reference if you're not expecting them to speak bad things?
Well, a lot of the time references are literally about, like, did this person actually work for this company in the position that they said they did? And so that's often why they will actually check a reference. So that if you say you were in this job for this company, they will call and they'll say, is this true? And ask a few very limited questions. But it's more like the industry works on whisper networks. It works on friends and friends of friends. And, like there are people I know who have, somebody has harassed them or abused them in some kind of toxic way. And that's something that obviously is going to follow that person around for their career.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. When I was a TA at DigiPen, I would never outright stop someone from getting a job, but there's definitely people that I TA'd for that I would not like to work with ever in my life, and I carried that with me.
Yep. And this is the way it works. And, again, not in a kind of a creepy, sneaky way where everyone has like a little notebook or whatever, but just in the way that people know each other and people talk to each other. And if you had a really good experience with someone, you will share that with other people. Mm-hmm. And if you had a really bad experience with someone, I mean, it might even be that you're like not comfortable talking about it. So you just say, there's some history there. I'd rather not talk about it, but that is enough to make them look a little bit deeper into that person's background. And if that person is you, not that it would be either of you, but, if you know that there's some stuff there, again, be prepared to talk about it. Be prepared to talk about how you learned, how you grew, how this was a dumb thing. You fixed it, you apologized, whatever. It is possible to come back from that as long as you are sincere.
Mm-hmm. I see. Like, wow, Fernanda, what do you think of this person? There is a lot to unpack here, so no comments at this time.
And I mean, most companies in any industry do have no hire lists. Like there are lists of people that is like, if this person applies for a job here, no. I don't care if it's a Wall Street bank or a game studio or whatever. If somebody really messes up badly, they can end up on a no hire list. So don't be an asshole.
Wow. I didn't know those were actually real.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. I'm pretty sure I'm not on one of those, but
no.
wow.
No.
I mean, the fact that we still have a job.
And like sometimes people like panic and they say to me, oh no, my cover letter had a typo in it. Am I going to end up on a blacklist? I'm like, no, you're really not. I promise you. Unless that typo was something really horrendous that you were saying to the person, it's going to be fine. You really have to mess up hard.
So as we know, interviews are a very nerve-wracking experience. Do you tell your students like any kind of advice to handle that stress or that anxiety?
Well, yeah. And I also tell them that a little bit of anxiety is good because it helps you keep your energy up, right? Like if you're going into an interview and you're like half asleep, that's not good either. And so you can take some of that anxiety and channel it in a really good way. And also prepare everything, prepare answers to the questions you think you might get asked, to some questions you might never get asked. Have like stories in your pocket if somebody says, oh, tell us about a team experience that didn't work out, or tell us about a time when you had a conflict with a supervisor. Have the stories ready and prepared, because then you don't have to think as much on the spot.
Yeah, I remember this is like such a story. We were having like a company day at DigiPen, and this guy was like, yeah, every time I go into an interview, I write something on a piece of paper and I put it on my shoe so that when I go into the interview, I know something that they don't. And it like completely changes my perspective. And I was like, that sounds really strange, but I'm glad it
Especially
works for
from
you.
portfolio class.
Hey, whatever works for you.
Was that from portfolio class?
Okay then.
Interesting.
You know, for some people, it's like as simple as having some little piece of jewelry or something in their pocket that they care about, just so that they don't feel completely alone, right? So reach in your pocket, hold on to the little, shell or stone or whatever it is, and it's like something to ground you a little bit, can really, really help.
Yeah, I like to think of it as I have confidence in myself and I have confidence in my skill set. And if this company doesn't hire me, they're the ones who are missing out, not me.
That's it.
And that makes me feel better.
Yeah. Then that's the other thing I'm trying to always tell people is that they're interviewing you, but you are also interviewing them. You have the power to say, this doesn't feel right. I don't want to work for this company. Because even though, yes, you need a job and there's student loans and there's all of this stuff, if you take a job that you don't feel good about, it won't last long anyway. You'll be unhappy and then you're back where you started. So I think that you also go in with the power to make choices. And that's really important to remember.
So what are some of the red flags that you should look out for during the interview?
Oh, goodness. Oh, there's so many though.
Yeah.
Like I think the first thing is who's interviewing you? Does everyone look the same as everyone else? What is the tone of the people? How do they interact with each other? How do they interact with you? Are the jokes funny or do they make you uncomfortable? Anything like that. And one thing I always tell students is when you're being interviewed and somebody asks you a question, answer the person who asked you the question. Don't just talk to the person you think is the most powerful person in the room, because people notice that. And again, often there is a gender element to that a woman will ask a question and the candidate will answer the man because they think the man's the boss and whatever. And so it's just a matter, I think, of seeing what kind of vibe you get from the people who are interviewing you, and asking good questions about stuff like working hours, how does crunch work, if there is crunch, anything like that. Like talk to me about diversity at your company. Talk to me about what efforts your company has made to bring in developers from a wide range of backgrounds. Like ask the questions, because again, if they get upset at those questions, do you want to work there?
Yeah.
You get to make choices.
Mm-hmm.
I remember one thing you told me, Sonia. It was like the awesome question to ask, and it was like you talk to the person who's like in your same field, and you're like, oh, what do you think makes in our case, a tech artist great?
Yeah. What do you think makes a great producer or tech artist or whatever? And another question to end an interview with that is actually my favorite ever. And a friend of mine who used to work at Turn 10 gave me this one. And it's basically at the end of the interview, when they say, do you have any more questions for us? You say, yes, can you tell me at this time if you have any concerns about me as a candidate for this position? And if so, can you give me a chance to discuss them with you right now? Because that means you have one more chance to convince them before this interview is over. Instead of they go away and they're worried about something and then they don't have it, you have a chance to do it right now. I love that question. It's total power move.
Somebody write that down. We're recording this. So
We're recording.
Yeah, you're recording. It's all good. I love that question so much. And I know that for a lot of people, they feel kind of nervous about asking it, but everyone I know who has tried it has been like, it went so great. Like, they said, well, we weren't sure if you had experience in, this particular thing. And I got a chance to say, well, yeah, actually I did a whole project in that, or, and so it really gave them a chance to like, just have that final thing to bring it home.
Yeah, I think it like has to do with the fear of, oh, they're concerned that you don't know this thing. But if you show yourself available to learn that thing, usually they find that like an incredible asset in a candidate.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's something that I tell people that I've mentored. Like if you're doing an interview and you're a junior or you're applying to a position that asks for a little bit more that you don't have, just tell them that you really want to learn, because that's something that got me hired.
Absolutely. Tell them that you want to learn and show them that you're good at learning. Like say, like this one project I did, I had no idea going in. So I spent the weekend teaching myself how to use it. So it shows that you can do this.
Yeah, and also like not knowing things is okay. I remember a few times in my interview where they were like, "Oh, do you know about this thing?" And I was like, "Oh, I don't, unfortunately, but I would love to learn more about it." And that was like a really good thing to say, I think.
Oh yeah, yeah. Some people just try to BS through it, and they're like, "Yes," and then they get all tangled up in some terrible, terrible response. So I'm like, if you don't know something, it's fine. You just say you don't know. If possible, you say, "I don't know how to use that thing, but I've used something else like it. Can I talk about that?" You know.
You got anything, Nina? Or you good?
No, it's just so fascinating. This is like a lot of good tips.
Good.
Yes.
I hope so. I hope so. And it's fun to talk about because again, like my whole thing is I want to empower people to get out there and do the interviews and do great, but also like have some power and be like, yeah, I nailed that interview and I still don't want to work for that place. Like when you can do that, the first time you do that, it is the best feeling in the world because it's like, okay, I did everything right. They want me and I still have the power to say no.
Oh, yes. I feel like as a tech artist, I don't know if that's like kind of a shitty thing to say, but I feel like I go into interviews with this extra level of comfort, knowing that tech artists are really hard to find. So I'm like,
Oh yeah.
they need me more than I need them.
Yep, they need you. A good tech artist is just like you said, really, really hard to find, and the money's good. So compared to
Yep.
other art jobs, so that's always a good feeling.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So speaking of questions you asked during the interview, so I kind of ran out of like idea of what to prepare for an interview I did a while ago. So I went online and like did some general Google search on like what to ask during the interview. One thing that was recommended in a couple articles was like what are like how could you advance from that position, like or is there a chance to like transition to other positions?
Mhm.
And I did ask that, but in the end, and like honestly, like I was applying for honestly like my dream position, right? So I even though I wanted to know an answer to that, but I wasn't planning on doing that.
Right.
But the interview result came back saying that like, from what we talked with you, it seems like you don't actually want this position and would want to work in other discipline more. So maybe try applying for that you inquired about. So how do you recommend me to tackle this kind of stuff next time?
Okay, well, I think that usually if you look at a position and you figure that after a few years in any position, you'll kind of grow out of it, right? And so you'll be looking at the next position that would be natural from that place. And so sometimes it helps if you go on LinkedIn and you look at other people who work for that company and you see, okay, they started in this position, then they became that, then they became this, and so on. So that tells you a couple of things. It tells you that you can do that, and it tells you that they were happy enough there to stay long enough for that to happen. And so then you can ask, questions about that. So rather than saying, okay, if I start as a technical artist, can I be a producer one day? Like that's way out there, right? So you don't want to ask that, but you want to say, like, what are the next steps from this position? Like if I get this position, what are the growth opportunities after I spend some time in this position? And sometimes that'll be you get to be a lead, and sometimes it'll be senior, sometimes it'll be management type position. And then you get to decide, is that the direction that you want to take? So I think asking them what are the opportunities for advancement in this position is better than like pulling a title out and going, can I do this?
Things, right?
Yeah. Ask them where you can go.
Okay, makes sense. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we talked about red flags from the companies, but what are some things that we as people being interviewed should avoid doing?
Okay, I think the most important thing is don't throw anyone else under the bus. So if you're asked a question about, tell me about a time when a team project didn't go well, don't say, well, that was because my teammate Joe was such an asshole. Like, don't do that. Basically, you can certainly say there was somebody on the team who wasn't like submitting their work on time, wasn't hitting milestones, but you have to focus on what was your responsibility there. What could you have done differently? Could you have tried harder to communicate? Could you have gone to a supervisor for help sooner than you did? So you focus on your responsibility rather than just blaming somebody else for the problem. That is a big one. And I think when you're asked about weaknesses and failures, that is tricky because people are, like you said, people are afraid to talk about, the bad stuff. They don't want to talk about weaknesses, but it is important to talk about them again in a way that shows that you understand and you're dealing with it and you've grown through it. So it's like, well, here's the weakness. Here's the impact it had on me. Here's what I've been doing to work on it. It's always like 3 parts instead of just, I suck at time management. Like, don't do that, So okay, if you suck at time management, what are the things that you're doing to get better at it?
Yeah, I remember being told when I was younger by someone, like, oh, if they ask for a weakness, tell them that, oh, I'm such a perfectionist and my work is way too good. Like,
no,
right?
No, I mean, like by the same token, don't tell them like deal breakers. Don't be like, I have anger issues when I get feedback. Like, don't do that. But I think talk about something that you can work on and something that you can show you've been working on, because nobody's perfect.
Sorry, my memory is like awful. Did we talk about what makes a candidate stand out from the others? Because I feel like we kind of talked about it in like learning and being willing to learn. Did we talk about this?
We've circled around it a little bit, and I think one of the things that makes a candidate stand out is if that candidate is showing a real interest in what they will be working on. Like, just instead of just, yes, I can do that, you're going to be asking them, so what opportunities would I have to do this if I was working on this project? Like showing some enthusiasm that is real, not fake enthusiasm, not like I've been playing your game since I was 5 years old, but which makes people feel old, by the way, don't do that. But because the hiring manager might have been making that game when you were 5 years old. So, but showing some enthusiasm and really being interested, like asking, okay, so what does a day in the life look like if I'm in this position? How big is the team going to be? Who would I be reporting to? What does the schedule look like? When are the stand-ups? Like really showing that you kind of want to see yourself in that position is really exciting. Instead of just like, yes, I need a job. I applied for this job. Give me a job.
Yeah, I remember I was pretty honest with my team when I was interviewing. I was like, oh, I mean, I haven't played your game like for 5 years, but I did play your game. One thing that I should have done is I should have played the game with the audio on, because a lot of people who play mobile games, they play with the audio off, and audio designers get really sad about it.
Yeah.
So here's a pro tip.
Yep. I always do that too. I turn the audio off as soon as possible.
Guilty as charged.
Yeah. Well, especially if I'm trying to play, like, and my husband's next to me trying to sleep or something.
Oh, also, if you're in the bus, you're not going to play with the audio on due to other people.
Yeah.
Exactly. But yeah.
Yeah, I feel like we should start wrapping up. Nina, do you have anything else?
No, all my questions has been asked.
Oh, I guess I should mention, Sonia, when I wrote that post on my blog about interviews, someone reached out to me and said, oh, that post you wrote with all of those tips, I followed them like religiously, and I did like an interview super well, and then she got the job the next day.
Yes, those are the best things. I love so
Yes.
much when that happens. Like every time somebody says, oh, I got this job or whatever, it's like an angel gets their wings and I'm happy.
Yes.
So happy. It's the best feeling.
But yeah, oh my gosh, Sonia, this was very delightful. I loved having you. We should have you more.
Okay, I'm always here for this. I love this. I love talking to people. So.
Me too. I miss doing that. Yeah, if you need anyone to do mentorship, let me know. I'm always happy to do that kind of stuff.
Thank you so much, because I think people need that more than ever right now, because so many students have this sense of, the world's been ending around them, and it's really hard for them to get the confidence up to get out there. And so anything that I can do to support that, I love.
Yeah, just reach out.
I will.
Do you have like a plug you'd like to talk about?
Do I have a plug? I mean, I don't have to plug the school. Y'all know what the school is and whatever. I don't have to plug my class because it's required for BFAs right now anyway. Yeah, it is. My comm class is now, currently required for BFAs and a couple of other programs. So, which is awesome for me. And again, I think the one thing I want to tell people is that it is more important to be yourself when you're applying for jobs so that you can get the job that is the best fit for you. Because if you try to force yourself into somebody else's mold, it won't feel good and it won't be great. So be yourself. I mean, be the good professional version of yourself, but be yourself, ask good questions, make good choices. And you don't have to feel like you're at everybody else's mercy all the time. You have some power to shape this the way you want to. That's my point.
Like be the best version of yourself, right? And like if you happen to be an asshole, maybe work on that. Like
yeah,
I
work
don't
on
know.
that a bit. Yeah, go to the Academy for Recovering Assholes and
but yeah, oh my gosh, thank you, Sonia, for being here. Thank you, Nina, for being my co-host. Thank you, me. Thank you for listening.
Thank you both so much. It's been a pleasure.